As the country builds up to an election in 2026, a lot of other elections have been happening in the midst of us. 2 by-elections are lined up at parliamentary level in Petauke and Pambashe constituencies. The Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue is in the midst of trying to find a common ground for various political parties in order to ensure that they coexist. The Executive Director is joining me on this edition of This Day. My name is Dingindaba Jonah Buyoya. Welcome to This Day. Doreen Njovu, ZCID Executive Director, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of This Day. Well, let's start off by going back to Kabwe, where we understand there was a confrontation between the Patriotic Front and the UPND, and there we saw Central Committee member of the Patriotic Front, Mumbipiri, being arrested. What are your sentiments as the ZCID over the inter-party violence that we witnessed?
Thank you so much, Jonah. And I think from the onset at ZCID, violence, whatever form, structure, or shape it takes, is condemned. So whatever happened in Kabwe, I think we were not on the ground, but from the clips we saw, some videos, we saw pictures, we saw, and some of the comments that we had from those organizations that were on the ground, we were disheartened as an institution that promotes dialogue. We've always appealed to our members not to speak at each other, but to find amicable ways of resolving whatever issues that they may have. So the Kabwe incident was not good. We condemned it. I think every well-meaning Zambian would tell you that over 60 years of independence, we shouldn't be where we are today. We were of the view that violence is now a thing of the past. But with what is currently pertaining, even as we speak today, we know that we have Pambashe and Petauke coming, and there are clips that are already being displayed. They are saddening us. So we are disappointed that we are at this stage. Yeah.
What is your assessment? Why are we failing to find a common ground? Why are we failing to find a solution and still go back to, this political violence?
Jonah, you realize that in Africa, power contestation is usually matched with violence and all these other vices. At the root cause is selfish interest, if you ask us, because I believe that if you have leaders that intend to serve the people, what will be prioritized is the welfare of the people. Now, we have to ask ourselves a question: can we say that these fights that go on during campaigns are benefiting the Zambian people in any way? So the selfish aspect cannot be overlooked, and also the fact that leaders themselves, I think it's time that they own up. You do not think that anyone in their rightful mind can just wake up and decide to cause commotion in the manner we've seen it. Clearly, this violence is sponsored. And so it's just time that we got to realize as a people, as a country, that leadership is supposed to be a vocation. You need to be out there wanting to serve the people and not for personal interest. Because if it's a do or die for you, then it means you can do anything as long as you win that election. So those are some of the issues that we see at play, because I think from time immemorial, Jonah, We have spoken about these issues, different stakeholders have spoken. The question still remains to say what could be the problem, what are the underlying issues. You realize that at the end of the day, self-preservation and personal interest, not necessarily in the interest of the country or the interest of the Zambian people, because if it were for the interest of the Zambian people, I think the landscape wouldn't be as ugly as it becomes when it's an election period.
It's been 3 years and a couple of months of the UPND in office, but we still see political party violence. You know, and this is a concern because the UPND made a commitment that they would work towards ending political violence. Why aren't these two parties, the PF and the UPND, getting along?
Yeah, you realize that I think just immediately after 2021, there were pronouncements by His Excellency, the President of Zambia, regarding the issue of violence. And we saw that there was actually a change. The third part is that we may not really understand quite right. It was a pronouncement that was made for good. What we need to understand is the strategies that are there to ensure that this violence has properly been curbed, because what we see out there, you would find that it's usually the governing party and the strongest opposition parties that are always clashing out there. So we were elated, we were happy that we began to see a semblance of peace. Even I think just after the elections, the by-elections we had, I think they were commendable. You would find statements from us, I think in the media, where we commended conduct of political parties during by-elections, that they conducted themselves with civility, there was tolerance, and so we implored them to say this is how it needed to be. But as we are going towards 2026, you can see that the raging violence, we can see that the things we thought were in the past are bit by bit showing their faces on the scene, on the political front. And so we are concerned, and we believe that the powers that be, the leadership within these political parties, will ensure that they term their people, they term their cadres, ensure that the violence is not sponsored. And I will repeat, the violence we see out there is sponsored. So if leaders can just say, we are not going to go this route, then we'll be good to go. So we are hoping that, looking at what happened, I do not know if you saw some of the videos from Petauke. They are disheartening. We cannot continue to go that route as a country. So let's check ourselves as political parties, because we are the ones that are out there. We are the ones that are on that battleground, fighting for votes, fighting for people to vote. And really, if we're going to go by that, just looking at some of those images, I'll tell you, they are not encouraging. I do not think I would leave my home to go and cast my vote. And already, what does that mean? We are undermining democratic processes. We are undermining the integrity of the electoral process. And so we have been talking about voter apathy. Do you blame the people for staying home because of what they are seeing or because of what is prevailing on the ground? And like I say, if it's for the people and you vote from the people, why become violent to a point where now these people decide to shun your election, where people decide to stay home instead of voting for their preferred candidate? They decide to stay home. So really, the issue of violence, we understand is deep-rooted, but we believe that we can make a difference, especially that we saw something good come out when pronouncements were made. We saw the first 2-3 by-elections after 2021, which were held under seemingly a sober environment. We believe that that can be done. If it's been done before, even if it's not really, it wasn't 100% as expected, but there was a greater change. We believe that something can happen.
Well, I'm glad to hear what you believe, but as you talk about these issues, for example, what is going on in Patriotic itself, as campaigns are underway, I would also like to find out from you, as the ZCID, what you're doing to change the situation and try to avoid the escalation of political violence, specifically with reference to these 2 by-elections that are coming up.
Okay, Jonah, you will realize that each institution has a mandate. ZCID is a platform for dialogue for political parties. And sometimes we've had sentiments. Somebody calls you and tells you to say politicians seem to have a problem with ZCID, or they seem to have lost confidence in ZCID, or ZCID is not doing A, B, C, D. You may be aware that ZCID is political parties. I am executive director here at ZCID, employed by the political party, by the politicians themselves. The ones that oversee the operations of this institution are the members of political parties, the board. And the board of ZCID consists of secretary generals of these political parties, one secretary general and a senior member of the party. And they offer policy direction. We are responsible for the day-to-day running of the institution. So when you say ZCID, sometimes when you hear sentiment says ZCID, for us, what comes to mind is that, oh, fine, people don't seem to understand or to know what we do or what our mandate is or who ZCID really is. They seem to have a certain grouping which they think is ZCID, not realizing. For instance, I'll give you an example. Political parties with parliamentary representation have 2 seats on the ZCID board, okay? And then those ones outside parliament, we've got a lot of political parties, over 80 registered political parties in this country. We cannot have all of them sit on the board. So amongst themselves, they elect 2 representatives to represent their interests on the board. So really, when you say ZCID, you're talking about political parties. When you hear a political party leader tell you ZCID, trust me, one finger will point at a certain group and the 4 will actually point at them, because this is their institution. They established it themselves to say they needed a platform where they could sit, iron out issues. They didn't need to speak to each other, to speak at each other through the media. They needed a table where they needed to come, sit, and iron out issues. So what ZCID does may not always be in the media, all right? I'll give you an example. We are on the table. We are with PNUP, for example, Party for National Unity and Progress. And we discovered that they are misconducting themselves in public out there, okay? Do we need to issue a statement to say, oh, come to order? Really, it will be more like exposing ourselves. We are on the same table. These are the people we speak to. These are the people that provide policy direction for the institution. So these are the people who sit on the same table and discuss these issues in national interest. Whatever it is that you see out there, No wonder some who do not really understand the operations have accused us of being quiet, because it's not everything that will speak to the media, will speak on our table. Only that at the moment, you have, we were highly polarized, and we are a voluntary institution, you may be aware. And so if political parties decide to drive certain narratives or certain agendas, at least we can is to condemn the violence. And like I said, each institution has a those ones that are causing violence are supposed to be known. We should have some form of early warning systems, mechanisms where you know that it's party A, party B, or party C that is behind this. So each institution has a mandate. Each institution was registered for a particular objective. We've got a mission, we've got a vision. So we cannot be all over. There are certain things we can do and certain things we can't do. So the table, the ZCID table is open. And I'm sure you have observed recently, since last year, we've been engaging individual party presidents. We started with the head of state. We are trying to see how we can have a summit of presidents and see how some of these issues can be discussed and can be ironed. But in our day-to-day running and operations, we have political parties that discuss some of these issues. But if one party or two or three decide to go their way, like I said, ZCID is a voluntary institution. A party can decide to belong to it or not decide to belong to it. So it's just an issue of saying, let's see how we can dialogue amongst ourselves as political parties. This, you have a space. If you are aggrieved, come to the table and let us talk.
I perfectly hear you, but have you, as ZCID, reached out to any of these two political parties, to bring them to the table as we are building up to these two elections in Petauke and in Pambashi? Have you brought these political parties to the table? They're already members of ZCID anyway.
I think network is becoming bad, but I think I had part of the question in us trying to reach out to these political parties. Like I said, the PF, right, when you're talking about two political parties in this regard, I want to believe that you're talking about the Patriotic Front and the UPND. These are our members on the board. These people are the ZCID. So when you start reaching out to them, like I said again, you have the SG, for instance, the Secretary General of the parties being represented. Only the challenge that we're now having, which we feel that is becoming problematic, are these factions within the political party. When you look at currently what is happening in the Patriotic Front, you have about 2 or 3 factions within a party. But now, for ZCID, we work with legitimacy would be who is the office holder, which grouping is reflecting at the Registrar of Society. And so these are some of the issues now for us as an institution. We have, for some time now, we've been discussing the registration and regulation of these political parties, because currently anyone can wake up and claim anything. And so these are some of the issues that we feel that they need to be resolved. You may work with, right now, what is, if you agree with me, out there we are told it's PF and UPND. When you go on the ground, we are told it's Tonse PF is not participating in the election. So there are all these underlying issues that as an institution, we're working around to see how we can bring closure.
You work with several stakeholders, but I think some of the stakeholders that you work with are the Electoral Commission of Zambia as a key stakeholder in managing some of these elections. So I want to ask you how you are also engaging the Electoral Commission of Zambia in managing these elections. They've been accused of mismanaging these elections, but you've also highlighted some issues that are basically electoral malpractices. Political violence is an electoral malpractice. And the Electoral Commission of Zambia has not sanctioned any of these political parties. So what is the ZCID saying about the management of elections by the Electoral Commission of Zambia?
The ECZ, like you have rightly put, is mandated by the Constitution to manage elections in the country. Now, I'll tell you, the issue of sanctions, I want to believe that, firstly, let me talk about maybe the collaborative effort. We collaborate with the Commission, and mostly, whenever there are issues, whenever there are concerns from our members, political parties in this regard, we seem to be, we are actually a bridge. We bridge the gap between our members and the Electoral Commission of Zambia through consultative meetings. Sometimes the meetings can be at their instance, or at our instance, we'll just pay courtesy call, or maybe write to them to say we have a couple of issues we need to address. We've got these concerns arising from our members, arising from your conduct in this particular space, in this particular election, and the like. So so far, I think there has been an open door policy at the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We have aired our grievances. Political parties have aired grievances collectively as a center, and also we know that individually political parties have approached the commission to air out their views, their grievances, and the like. Coming, there is room. There is a lot that needs to be done. There is room for improvement. Most of our members, we are speaking here. I wish I could speak my views, but I can't. I'm supposed to represent the views of the members. Some of the members would tell you, no, we do not have confidence in the ECZ, and they will state the reasons why they seem not to have confidence in the ECZ. And we said confidence in the ECZ depends on the Commission's ability, to implement reforms that guarantee its independence, the guarantees transparency, and as well as the professionalism. As a center that represents political parties, we remain optimistic. We think that with continuous collaborative efforts and processes, ECZ can restore its faith or maintain its public trust in its operation. The many other issues you would I would want to talk about, for instance, for some time, stakeholders have talked about decentralizing, fully decentralizing the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and there are definitely reforms. I'm sure you're aware currently that there is an electoral reform technical committee that was established that is looking into some reforms around the operations of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And so, from our members, they make submission. The issue, when you go back to what happened in Kawambwa and in many other elections, you would note that there is a feeling that ECZ should be able to entirely manage the election. There is ECZ uses, they do not have staff of their own across the country. They don't seem to have infrastructure of their own across the country. And we are saying that it will be important to capacitate the Electoral Commission of Zambia in order for it to be able to well manage the election, because that is their mandate. So amongst the many other issues, those are just some that I can highlight.
Now, let's talk about the impact of these elections on the 2026 election. What kind of tone do you think this sets for the general election that we'll have next year?
You know, when you look at the last by-election and the ones that we are yet to have, they are like a litmus test for 2026 election. Clearly, we are saying that a peaceful and credible process will send a message about Zambia's readiness to uphold democratic principles. Because at the moment, it is crucial for all the stakeholders to use these by-elections as a platform to foster trust and demonstrate their commitment to free and fair elections. If we go by what is currently pertaining, if violence is not curbed, we are likely to face, I think, massive apathy because nobody wants to go risk their lives out there. So really, we should be in check. We should check ourselves. Political parties should check themselves. The Zambia police should check itself. ECZ, that is responsible for the management of elections, should also check itself and ensure that 2026 is not going to have a semblance of what we are currently seeing today.
To effectively manage these elections and increase participation, we need people to actively be a part of the exercise. How do we ensure that citizens actively participate in these elections and are a part of the process now and in 2026?
So there's got to be a lot of, number one, sensitization. We need more and more people to register. At the moment, we know that a continuous registration is currently in the country. Register to vote, but more so importantly, we need to have an environment that fosters trust, an environment that fosters peace, an environment that fosters integrity, because at the end of the day, even if we have 1,000 people voting, because when you look at currently in places where we've already had by-elections and we're going to have by-elections, look at the number of registered voters by the voters register, and you look at the number of people that turn out to vote. The numbers are not very good. So it's important that we create an environment that fosters trust. We create an environment that fosters peace to ensure that come 2026, everyone who is eligible will turn out to vote.
I would like for us to talk about the campaign and political party financing as the last part of our interview. It keeps coming up as a conversation, and I would like to find out how the ZCID is involved in this conversation.
Okay, at the moment, we have noted that
You can
Yeah, we
continue.
recognize that campaign and political party financing is central in ensuring transparency and having a level playing field in elections. We need to get to a level where voters or the electorate are voting for ideas and not necessarily going to the polling station because they have been given a 20 quarter or 30 quarter. We are engaging with different stakeholders, even our own members of political parties, to develop legislative framework that promotes accountability in campaign financing. For us, the importance of campaign financing, but entirely we're talking about the legislative framework, like I said earlier. We're looking at registration, regulation, and campaign financing. All these for us are critical issues. Please, you talk to what extent do we have sanity within these political parties? I was just talking about factions. At the moment, almost each and every party has a faction. And where are all these things stemming from? Okay, what is the status of a political party? How are political parties registered? How are political parties regulated? What is the status of the intra-party conflict resolution mechanism? All these issues within parties. So for us, it's a broader view. We've been discussing the formulation of a legislative framework that ensures that political parties ensures the regulation, registration, and as well as funding of political parties is involved, is made in a way that responds to Article 60 of the Constitution. Because whatever we are trying to do right now, we are drawing from the Constitution. It is the Constitution that is saying that a political party should have a national character. It is the Constitution that says there shall be a political party fund. So we have collaborated with partners to advocate for transparency in this regard. And so we are hoping that we will make progress.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to us on this edition of This Day.